What's up, everybody? So we're back on the shop with another Shop Talk Tuesday, and in this episode we are going to be working on the good old Camp Tonto, this bad boy right here, a little thickened. Now, in this episode we need to work on heat treating, getting the bevels finished, getting the maker's mark put on, getting the acid etching done, getting the stone washing done. It's a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to get into it. Okay, we are going to get into it. But I wanted to talk about something. And again, I know, Shop Talk Tuesdays with the talking. What are you doing, Eric? But I had good info in the last one, and I kind of want to hit on something because I thought it was going to be just like one person asked me, because I know that I've been thinking of it myself. But I ended up having quite a few people ask me one question, and that was, Eric, why do you work with so much 5160? Is that the only thing you work with? Now, of course, if they've watched other videos, I've done a lot of different steels, but it is a valid question because lately I've been using a lot of 5160. Now, I know that we just released a video of me working with the 80 CRV2 for the 5 shop build knives, and when it pulls down to it, since those knives, I haven't worked with much steel other than 5160, and I can tell you why, okay? And hopefully y'all will get a good takeaway from this, because this is something that I've talked about in a lot of different videos in the past, and it's something that I really think that new knife makers need to think about getting into this particular hobby. So, if you go back and you watch all of my videos, which would probably take a while because there's a lot of them. So, I work with 1080, 1084, 5160, 15N20, 80 CRV2. I'm about to start working with 52100. Now, the reason why I work with those particular steels is because they all have similar heat treat processes. They can all be done in a forge with a Venturi burner. They can all be done with peanut oil as the quenchant. Now, I've used AAA, I've used Parks 50 for different, particular builds and all that stuff, but they have the same process. It's not exactly the same, but very similar within certain tolerances to be able to do the normalizing, the heat treating, the quenching, all that stuff, tempering, and everything. And one of the biggest things that was told to me whenever I wouldn't say when I was first getting into this, let's say I've been making knives for about 6 months to 8 months, and I myself was thinking about doing a bunch of different steels, because whenever you get into this particular hobby, you want to try everything. You want to do it all. Now, what I was told is pick a steel, work with that steel, perfect your processes, and then move to the next thing. So what I took from that was, okay, yeah, I can do that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a few steels that have similar processes, and I'm just going to focus on those while I'm getting used to everything. And that's what I did. Those are the steels that I just mentioned. And the whole point behind that is there's no need to use 10 different styles of steels if you haven't perfected the heat treating of one singular one. Now for me, my 5160 process has worked amazingly. I've got a sword that has a 0 edge on it. That means there's no secondary bevel going down into it. It is just bevel all the way to edge. It's one of the thinnest edges that I've done, and I literally use that sword to cut a tree down, cut all the branches off that tree, then take that tree and cut it into 3.5, 4 foot sections so that I could dispose of it. And then I shaved with that sword. The edge retention on that has proven to me that my heat treat process works within 5160. So I'm very, very, very confident within that process. I'm confident within 1084, 80 CRV2, 15N20, a lot. So I really focus on those things. That was the whole point. I've been doing this for a few years now, and the whole thing is If you're going to make a knife, it needs to be a quality knife. It needs to be something that can hold an edge, that can get an edge put back on it easily so that it can then be used again. You need to be able to do that. Making a pretty knife that is not able to hold an edge is just making a pretty knife-shaped thing. It might be stabbable, but is it cuttable? Is it sliceable? Is it maintainable? If it's not, then you're not really doing your customers a good service. You're doing them a disservice. Okay, so it's one of those things that you need to focus on what you're doing, perfect that thing, so that whenever you're putting these things out into the world, that there's something that someone can use for a long time. Okay, that's the biggest thing about being a good bladesmith and, you know, making your name really worth something. You know, it's one thing to make an art piece, but it's another thing to make a functional piece of art. So think about that. Don't try and jump around and do all kinds of different things. Focus on something, get really good at that something, and then put that out into the world. Cool? Hopefully that's helpful. If you got a takeaway from that, let me know. Comment section down below. If you think that I talked way too much, let me know in the comment section down below. Without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get into the knife making portion of this. What we're going to do, we're going to start out there in the forge. We're going to get our normalizing cycles done, which is just bringing it up to 1600 degrees, letting it air cool, bringing it up to 1500 degrees, letting it air cool, bringing it up to 1400 to 1420 degrees, letting it air cool. Once it's done cooling, we'll put it back in the forge. We'll bring it up to 1525 degrees. We'll quench it in 120 degree peanut oil, and then we'll go ahead, temper it 400 degrees for 2 hours. Then we'll go ahead and start the rest of the processes, which is just final grinding the bevels, getting the maker's mark, getting acid etching and stone washing done. Guys, let's get out into the forge. Let's get this thing knocked out. Alright, so let's file test it. So that definitely works. So now we need to put it in the oven, 400 degrees for 2 hours. Go ahead and get this heat treat process wrapped up. So now it's time to go ahead and acid etch this. We're going to be using my acid that I have that's 50/50 ferric chloride and distilled water. The acid I actually got from Radio Shack. A lot of people ask me about that. So Radio Shack still has a website that you can order stuff from, and this is just computer component etching acid. And that's what I use. Like I said, it's a 50/50 mixture with ferric and distilled water. We're going to put it in here for about 8 minutes, do that first round, clean it off, then go back in for about 6 minutes, and then we should be done with the acid etching part of this, and then we're going to stone wash it. So even though the etch looks pretty good right here, I always go in for a second etch because I want to come through and I want to clean everything off on this first one, because there's always a chance that there's a little bit of debris or something like that on the blade itself, and if there is, whenever you're etching, it will etch around that. We want to make sure that we get a nice uniform etch. Even though we're going to be stone washing, it's still good to have a nice good etch going into the stone wash. So now we're going to go ahead, get it back into the etchant, about 6 minutes, take it out, clean it, then stone wash. So right now what we're doing is we are stone washing this. We got our blade inside here. We've done our 2 rounds of acid etching. Now we just need to stone wash it. We're using a mixture of aquarium stones and WD-40 inside here. And we're just basically shaking it around. That way we can get it nice and stone washed. This is one of the easiest ways to actually do this, but you could always find other ways to do it. This is just the way that I do it. It's like a less awkward shake weight. Alright. Let's check this out. And there is our stone wash. I'm going to go ahead and clean it up the rest of the way, buff it just a hair, and then we will do our outro. Alright guys, let's go ahead and wrap this Shop Talk Tuesday up here. Check this thing out. I love the way this looks with the acid etch and the stone wash on there. So one of the things that this does is it makes all of the lines stand out a ton. So look at that plunge line area right there. The line for the swedge going into the bevels here. Just because of the way the light plays into this, it just looks absolutely awesome. Everything about this. Where our jimping is. I am super excited about this, and I want to know, what do y'all think about it? Do y'all think this was the right direction? Do you think I should have sanded them and then polished them and left them how they were? Or do you think I should have left it super dark? I want to know. You know, these are things where I like to hear what y'all think about this, because it might tailor what I do moving forward in a couple other knife builds. But whew, I think it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited about the handle scales that I'm going to use. They are not fancy. I am not putting fancy handle scales on this particular knife. And I think whenever y'all see what I'm doing, it'll make sense for why I chose that. But again, I'm not doing anything super fancy. It will look cool and it will match the aesthetics of this. Might not be the way that y'all think it's going to or anything like that, or some people it might not make sense, but hopefully y'all trust me enough at this point to choose what I choose for handle scales and things like that, and the pin combinations and everything. I think y'all will dig it. So we'll see how it goes. Now, when it comes down to it, there's not a ton of takeaways in an episode like this other than like the heat treating process. When it comes to hand sanding, it's hand sanding. You know, there's nothing too amazing about the hand sanding process. The etching process, the big thing is, whenever you're going to etch, just make sure that you're pulling it out, you're cleaning the blade, then you're going back into the etchant, and then you're pulling it out and you're cleaning it. You know, make sure you lubricate it. Make sure that if you're going to pull it out and pause for a second after the etching, you want to clean the blade completely. You want to go ahead and oil the blade so that you don't, risk getting rust on it, because that etchant will continue to etch and it will actually force the steel to rust. So just be careful of that. If you're going to pull it out of the etchant, clean it completely, go ahead and oil it, and then clean the oil off moving into the next step. Like I said, if you're going to have a pause between what you're doing. So there you go. Guys, thank y'all for coming by. If y'all would, give the video a thumbs up, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there, and I'll catch y'all next time.